A thread by Carlos Osuita, a two-part thread, different from previous ones. I'm going to ask you one question. You must answer it in the comments. Your answers determine the content of the next thread. First, we see that the Democratic brown shirts are effective with some. More than one person told me that people might not vote for Donald Trump because Democratic brown shirts block entrances. Now, there's no conventional solution to this. You can't form a gauntlet of cops and force attendees to endure screaming threats and profanity. Parents won't subject their children to that. Children won't subject their elderly parents to it either. Now, people crippled by fear have already forgotten the distant past of 2 months ago. The rallies weren't stopped then. But now, people who couldn't get in still might vote for Trump. They're going to do this on election day. Amazing. Every day is a new day for too many people. Each time the press and the Democratic death cult declare Trump gone, he, of course, emerges stronger by defeating the childish attempt to stop him. Today's gloating and panic are like a passing car playing ear-splitting rap music. You hear it for a second, shudder in revulsion, and carry on. But that message will never sink in. Did you hear what Chris Wallace said? No, I'm not interested. But people refuse to understand that Trump's surface is not his entire being. They let bad faith insults demoralize them. Trump will win despite you. So this one time, I want you to put on your thinking caps. In every comment, I want an answer to the following question. Your answers will determine the course of the subsequent thread. Ready? Why are the Democrats in a never-before-seen frenzy to stop Trump? Refrain from trying to be clever or a smart aleck. For once, defy expectations and give me a sincere answer. I need to gauge your ability to think. Not taking the question seriously reveals you as an unserious person not worth my time. Prove yourselves worthy of my time and effort. Why are the Democrats in a never-before-seen frenzy to stop Trump? I'll be back later to write the follow-on to this thread. And no wait needed. The follow-on continues. Thank you for the great, thoughtful answers to my question. Why are the Democrats doing all this? Victorious 2020 nailed it. Because he has already won 2020. By he, she means Donald Trump. It's really that simple. There's no if in her answer, and she's correct. Here's another way of saying the same thing from Alice 72850. I think they know there's no way to beat him. Every rock they throw at him gives them a black eye. They know he's gamed it all out, no way for them to win. So instead of accepting their loss, they're throwing a temper tantrum. Now, looking back at military history, we see that the only people who fight harder after they know they've lost are fanatics, ideological or religious fanatics. In World War I, there was almost no hatred between the combatants, except on the Italian front. The Italian front was fueled mostly by rabid nationalism and religion. Unspeakable atrocities were committed by all sides. The Austro-Hungarian Empire had Germans, Hungarians, Poles, Croats, Bosnians, Serbians, Italians, Czechs, Ruthenes, Slovenes, Slovaks, and Romanians. There were entire units of Muslims in the Austrian-Hungarian army. The Italians were fanatical Catholics and nationalists in that order. Here's part of a photo of German troops who just won a battle against Italians. These are trench raiders armed with pistols and hand grenades. They're numb with shock. The Italians initially put up a frenzied fight and refused to surrender. They had to be killed with flamethrowers. On the Western Front, trench raid could be bad, but usually they weren't. You can find tons of photos with smiling prisoners. Here are Austrians captured by Americans. In World War II, the Imperial Japanese and the Nazis became frenzied as their inevitable end approached. Plenty of German prisoners had to be beaten into submission, as in literally clubbed with rifle butts until they stopped. The Battle of Berlin was one of the most violent of the war. And then after the war, the Werwolf insurgency ended up in the Allies using absolutely savage methods of suppression. We took hostages and executed them, razed towns, brought back the guillotine, and so on. After Germany, we weren't going to go through that again with the Japanese, so we just dropped atom bombs on them. And guess what? The Japanese claimed to be fighting for the emperor. Well, after he agreed to surrender, Japanese officers attacked the palace. The emperor had recorded a surrender announcement. Officers disarmed the guards and broke into the palace. The palace stewards dodged them from room to room, passing off the surrender recording from one person to another. Someone took it outside and handed it to a courier who got it to the radio station. The officers attacked the radio station. The station employees managed to convince the officers that the recording never arrived. After ransacking the place, the officers left. They drove down the street screaming and throwing resistance leaflets out onto the streets. Then they all went home and killed themselves. What were they thinking? Nothing. They were simply berserk, like the Nazis and the Democrats. I'll tell you the funniest story ever. The German submarine U-234 was ordered to take technical drawings, examples of the newest electric torpedoes, one crated ME-262 jet aircraft, a Henschel HS-293 glide bomb, and 1,200 pounds of uranium oxide to Japan. 2 Japanese naval officers were on board. On May 4th, U-234 got a message that Hitler was dead, and his replacement, Admiral Karl Donitz, ordered that all German U-boats surface, raise the white flag, and surrender. The German skipper submerged and had a talk with his crew. He decided to obey the orders and set sail for Newport News, Virginia. The 2 Japanese officers drew their weapons and ordered the Germans to continue to Japan. The Germans overpowered the Japanese, put them in torpedo tubes, and fired them into the depths. Then they surfaced, raised the white flag, and continued until they were intercepted by 2 American destroyers. The Germans surrendered without incident. The Democrats know they've lost. That's why they're doing all this completely demented, self-destructive stuff. They aren't thinking. Look at Twitter. All leftists are off their rockers. Trump got 7,000 people at Tulsa despite the pandemic and despite credible threats. At the next rally, protesters will be kept a block away. If mayors refuse to cooperate, Department of Homeland Security takes over. Problem solved. And Trump will have snap rallies the way he did in 2016. The most deadly tactical weapon in World War II was the British Hawker Typhoon single-seat fighter bomber. It dropped bombs, it fired rockets, and it was armed with 4 20-millimeter cannons. Typhoons wiped out entire German armored columns before they could even reach the battlefield. Here go the rockets. Look at the massive warheads. And the sad German wreckage. Armored vehicles blew up into the air and did somersaults. The Germans called the Jabos, short for Jagdbomber. There are stories of survivors crying decades later at how terrible it was to see all their mighty weapons turned to scrap metal by a couple of aircraft. Well, that's what happens when you start world wars. Trump and Brad Parscale and Jared Kushner are Hawker Typhoons. The Democrats are the Nazi future scrap metal. So that's why the Democrats are doing all of this. The Yabos roared when they came in. The Democrats hear the growl preceding the roar. They're running in circles, bonking heads, tearing out their hair, sobbing, laughing, punching themselves in the face, and the typhoons continue their run. Ha!